Ready.
Okay. Well, I'm having a great chat with composer Sean Friar. One of his pieces is going to, which is going to be a delight. I've listened to it several times. His piece, Velvet Hammer, is going to be performed by Camerata Pacifica all over Southern California in the next week. And it's going to be quite a program, as though that was something new with programs by artistic director Adrian Spence. We've got David Bruce, Steampunk. I can hardly wait to hear that one. I've heard a little bit on video. Stephen Hartke, one of LA's, Stephen I think was here for a while as composer in residence or something. Maybe not. The Horse with the Lavender Eye. Now give me a break. That has to be something to enjoy listening. Sean's Velvet Hammer. And then, as always with Adrian Spence, he kind of brings the audience down from the ceiling a little bit with, some charming Percy Grainger, a Gabriel Fauré, Après un rêve from 1939, arranged for piano, and then Sir Charles Stanford, an Irishman, by the way, Adrian, Serenade in F, a lovely late romantic early 20th century work composed in 1906. Now, Sean, let me give the location. Sorry, take a nap. I'll be done in a minute. The Camerata Pacifica is playing on Sunday, the 10th of January. That's this coming Sunday. Tomorrow, by the time we finish recording this, 3 p.m. in Ventura. Tuesday, January 12th, 7:30 in San Marino. Thursday, January 14th in Los Angeles at the Zipper Hall, and Friday in Santa Barbara, and that's my main audience, but I know this goes out all over Southern California. You need to take down the phone number I'm going to give you in a minute, but Friday, January 15th in Santa Barbara at Hana Hall. And there's a little lunchtime concert that's a little less expensive at 1 o'clock, and a 7:30 performance in Santa Barbara of this program. Tickets, now this is kind of universal throughout Southern California, so everybody, all of you in Ventura, San Marino, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, jot this down. The ticket telephone number is area code 805-884-8410. Buy tickets. This is going to be quite a program. Now, let me give a little introduction because Sean Friar is a senior lecturer. Look at this guy. I'm an old man, and he's already senior lecturer in composition at USC Thornton School of Music. And Sean is an LA boy. First experiences were in rock and blues, and I'm very curious about that. Improv. So you're a keyboardist.
Yeah, piano is my main instrument.
Yeah. Okay. And then I don't know. How does the classical music bug? Wait a minute, let's get started. How does the classical music bug infect a rock and jazz improviser? What was the moment that did something to you?
And that's a good question because I think increasingly with younger generations, almost nobody's getting into classical music through classical music. Everybody starts out listening to rock or pop or, I mean, even jazz. That would be quite a small group of young people listening to that. So yeah, it seems increasingly few people just fall into it immediately. In my case, I think I was lucky that I always had piano teachers. I took piano lessons starting when I was, I think, about 3.5 or 4, and I was, yeah, so pretty young. But they weren't. It wasn't that kind of rigid. You will learn, you will learn all your scales. You will learn classical music, blah blah blah. Even though that's good, but it wasn't the first step. They were teachers that always just made music making fun, and I think most critically encouraged me to improvise. I always liked improvising, partly just because I could hear a tune that I wanted, whether it was, I don't know, something by Jerry Lee Lewis, who was one of my first musical idols, or a film score by John Williams, and then try to figure it out on the piano. And so they didn't stifle that. And I think that, coupled with the fact that I also was kind of impatient with practicing, also suited
That's right.
improvisation. So I was lucky that I had teachers that never stifled that. And so I started just writing. At first, I was improvising or writing pieces in kind of 12-bar blues style format. So not what we call classical music. But then there was actually, and I really have to give credit to it, a competition run in the public schools throughout the country, run by the PTA, the Parent Teachers Association, called the Reflections Contest. And they had, let's see, categories in photography, music composition, literature and visual arts. Then they separated it from, I think, elementary, middle school, and high school age students. And you could, submit pieces, and then they were judged on a school, district, state, national level, things like that. But you had to submit some kind of written score for your music. So that was actually the first thing that encouraged me to write something down. I actually remember the first one when I submitted 12 Bar Blues, and one of the judges made a comment like, like really good, but you should actually learn how to do proper 12 bar blues format because this isn't right. And anyway, from there, then eventually in middle school and high school, I started studying with a composer who is a graduate student at UCLA in music composition. And he started introducing me to a lot more classical music. I had known a little bit, some Beethoven and some Mozart, but he really got me into it.
Well, let me say, as the old guy here that went the formalist school, as most of us did, once upon a time, I can't improvise to save my soul, except in the shower when I'm whistling. And I've worried and fretted. No, I didn't pull my hair out; that happened naturally. But worried because I thought I was seeing a big decline in young musicians looking at art music. And you have just described for me this paradigm change that young people begin in rock and roll and popular music because it inundates the airwaves, and somehow one or two creep out of that and become magnificent composers. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's happening more and more naturally, and that there are just certain things that you can do, or rather, that concert music is really good for that. Well, other genres don't pay as much attention to. And the thing that I always come back to is that form is an expressive part of classical music. How ideas change over time, how you can construct these really large, let's say, musical narratives. There's something really exciting about that, and it's hard to do in genres where you only have 3 or 5 minutes to do something, or you're expected to hear to a given format like a typical pop song or something. Not to say that those aren't really expressive and creative genres too, just not along that parameter.
Yeah, and again, I'm glad to say that I hope people will agree with me, I've gotten past a bit of snootiness over the
I think
years.
so. I think we've realized that doesn't help us.
Yeah, and the bottom line is anything of any kind that's creative in any field for human beings is good. You know?
I agree. If everybody had a little bit of creativity in their lives, it would be a good thing.
Let's see. You wrote an extensive and glorious program note that people are going to read when Camerata Pacifica performs your work all over Southern California. But can you about Velvet Hammer? Can you give me, because I was just like mesmerized by the concept. Can you get kind of somehow condense this concept that you speak to in the program note about Velvet Hammer?
Sure. So the piece was written for a group called Now Ensemble, who's comprised of flute, clarinet, electric guitar, piano, and bass. So, 4 acoustic instruments and 1 amplified instrument. And what I decided I wanted to do was to, instead of trying to find a way to nestle the electric guitar into the rest of the ensemble and have them play together in a normal chamber music-like fashion, I decided I wanted to really embrace the sound world of the electric guitar, kind of what we all associate with the electric guitar when we hear it. So at least for me, that meant more of a kind of rock or even heavy metal sound world, like heavy distortion, taking advantage of different kinds of effects like delay pedals. But I didn't want it to be kind of A versus B, where you've got electric guitar and then all the other instruments. I wanted to find, as much as possible, a way to make them all be part of one world. And I decided, since the electric guitar had so many possibilities, and since it's just louder than everybody else if it wants to be, that would be a good place to start. And so I decided to make the electric guitar I guess you could say, the sonic skeleton of the piece, and then find ways for all the other instruments to participate in things that are inherently part of the electric guitar's sound world. So that could be, the guitar is playing with really heavy distortion, then the flute's playing really high, kind of steam whistle-like tones that sound as if they're also coming out of a distortion pedal. Or maybe the flute will play with a really airy tone, like, which also kind of works with that. And I also do things with the delay pedal and having other instruments mimic it and some other things. But yeah, that was at the core concept, the core idea of the piece, that the guitar would be the sonic impetus for all the other instruments.
Okay, that sounds fascinating. And again, everybody, you can go up on YouTube and have a look at Velvet Hammer. Remember, it's Sean Friar. Pardon me for plugging you, Sean. Sean Friar, Friar. And I want to also plug the new album, or recent album anyway, Awake. And folks, all you have to do is go to Amazon.com and type in Sean Friar Awake and have a look and have a little listen. This is new, interesting level of new music. I mean, I hear influences, and I'm going to ask you about process right in a second. I hear it. I hear. I don't want to insult with influences, but I hear a little Reich. I hear a little minimalism and so on, and yet not. And so tell me, this is like writing a novel to compose a piece of music. That's why I'm a conductor. It's much easier for starters. Sorry, Larry Smith, if you're, listening from heaven, my teacher. But composition is such a lonely process. What is the process? How you sequester yourself somewhere or not? What?
Yeah, it usually requires a fair amount of sequestration just to not get distracted. I would say the beginning process isn't always the same from piece to piece, although more often than not for me, I do start off improvising at the piano a little bit, partly because there's so much of the process that's so heady and detail oriented, where you're really thinking about every note and every articulation, that it's nice to have one part where you're sort of overriding that. So often what I do is just turn on a recording device and play for a long time, and I'd say start circling in on ideas that I think have some kind of compositional potential, and then maybe I might improvise on it for 20 minutes, and it could be that none of that ends up being useful material, or maybe 5 seconds, or maybe 3 minutes. But that's often something that I start with. I would say in the case of this piece, even though I'm not an electric guitarist, I do have an electric guitar, and so I had that plugged into my computer and was messing around with different kinds of sounds that I thought would not only sounded good on the guitar, but would actually blend with these other instruments. So I'd say I was trying to kind of come up with a sort of a palette for the piece before I was really concerned with what was going to happen when.
Ooh, that's like visual art in a way. I've seen painters paint layers of color, just swaths of color, and then they build slowly and slowly upon that the detail. It's a great analogy. It just occurred to me. And when are you done? When does it say? By the way, how do you use the modern technology? For me now, even as a critic and so on, without the computer, I used to have to go to a damn dictionary. Go ahead, your turn.
Let's see. So the first one, or rather, your most recent question, or the first question? That was the first question. When is it done? Let's see. I think mostly when I feel that I wouldn't say I rarely start a piece knowing exactly where it's going to go. Sometimes I have a pretty good idea, but I tend to think that when you're in the thick of it is when you know the material the best. So it would be foolish to override your impulses when you've been writing a piece for a long time. I'd say when I think I'm done, I'll put it down. I often don't have that much time to put it down before it's due, but I'll put it down, try to take a few days away from it to just get a little bit detached from it, and then playing it back, on the computer is often what I end up doing, unless it's a kind of piece that really just doesn't use the technology well. And mostly I think what I'm listening for is if I think the timing is right. Did I do things for a long enough time to express to the audience what I'm getting out of the material? Are there any terrible missed opportunities, or are there any things that I just went on for too long about and they kind of lost their their interests. Those are the biggest things I look for. You know, I might have one or two pieces now where I listen back and I think that that's pretty close. I don't think I need to change anything, even a few years after. But most of them, there are little to significant things that one would go back and change, and sometimes it's worth doing, and sometimes it's worth saying that it's still okay, but
Hmm.
I'm going to let that rest. And your second question, how does the technology factor in? Um, I am a I'm a strong proponent of using everything at your disposal and being aware of what they're good for and also how they can be crutches. So, for instance, playing at the piano is certainly great if you're writing piano music. It's great for coming up with harmony and just kind of most kinds of musical gestures. It's really terrible for thinking about color or nuances of articulation. Then the computer is really great for getting a sense of timing. It's great for rhythmic music. It's great for music that has a lot of complicated layers that you couldn't play yourself all at once. It is also terrible for color. It's terrible for anything
Really?
expressive. Just because most of the sounds aren't that good, and for instance, there's so many things that a flutist could do to capture your attention just playing a single note by changing the airflow, changing the dynamic, changing the color of the sound, and these are things that are really worthwhile things to do sometimes that the computer can't do for you. And so, if you only use the computer, you just miss all of those opportunities, or it sort of bullies you into not doing them because you can write something about changing the tone. You can put that text in the score, but it won't affect the playback at all. So I think especially with younger composers, that can be really powerful if you're not aware of what the computer, what its limitations are. Sometimes writing just pencil and paper is really useful because it forces you to think creatively about possibilities and not worry about anything actually getting realized in the moment. So I tend to bounce back and forth between all of them pretty often, partly because it makes me feel better that I'm not missing opportunities. I would say that's the big one. Some composers always do one thing or the other, and that works for them, and that's great. For me, I like being on the threshold of overwhelming myself with all the different ways my ideas could go, and then just bringing it back just before everything goes to hell. And yeah, kind of going back and forth between all these methods really helps me feel good about that.
Good, and it reminds me also of, I'm a musician, but I have to write reviews and things, and you had just explained that I don't think I've heard from other composers. I think it's very crucial that you consider it finished, you walk away from it, you come back the next morning, you sleep on it or whatever, and then you see things as you've just described. Let me give people in the greater Los Angeles area, particularly, and there are people all over the place watching this. Can I let Sean Friar tell me what's up just quickly in the next 5 years so that people will understand how they must rush to the theaters we're going to describe to hear Velvet Hammer? What's up?
Well, let's see. For the next 5 years, see, I've got a few smaller chamber pieces that I'll be writing very soon. One is a piece for two pianists for a duo called Hockett, who's based in the LA area. I'll be writing a cello concerto for cello and wind ensemble for a great young cellist named Mike Kaufman. Also, an ensemble that has not been written for too often, so I'm excited about that. If for any of the audience that goes to the Camerata Pacifica concert and hears Velvet Hammer, if they like that sort of thing, I'm writing a half-hour piece for the same ensemble, now ensemble, who originally commissioned the group. So that'll probably be that'll be my big project over the next year or so. And I'm still toying with exactly what I want that piece to do, but I'll be starting on that one very soon. Gosh, what else?
Is that your first?
I'll be honest, my whole 5 years, they're not all planned out yet. So if anybody hears anything they like, they can They can call me up.
I was going to ask a couple of things. Do you go to them and ask if, or do they come to you these days and ask for compositions?
I think it's healthy for it never to be completely a composer waiting for people to ask them. It's nice. It's definitely nice. So I'd say it's gotten more and more um, people asking me, but it's also continued to be, and I think this is one of the really important things to remember as a young composer when you're trying to cultivate whatever your career, is that so many of them have continued to come out of friendships, people that you knew in school, people that you went to music festivals with, because while everybody's just another student at one point, a lot of people go on to do really great things. So for instance, this now ensemble, I met them in graduate school. Um, and
They're
yeah, I would
they're
say about
they're uh, they're New York based, right? So you met them when you were
they're
in
New
school.
York based. Yeah. So I met them out there and we've stayed in touch and they've continued to be a tremendously productive new music group out there and they've put out a lot of albums. Um, and then of course there are things like bigger institutions, if you get a commission from a major orchestra. In my experience, those have been the things that you sort of just hope you get on their radar at some point and then they call you. I don't think calling them works very well, but I could be wrong about that. So I'd say I guess I try to cultivate different levels where on the one hand I'm always writing pieces for people that I know, that I have some kind of personal relationship with, and then on the other hand you're trying to get these also high visibility big institutional commissions that you probably where the personal matters a little bit less.
And I was going to ask about the cello concerto because for many years I conducted Seattle Wind Ensemble in Seattle, and I'm a classical orchestra conductor. I mean, I loved the real, the fascinating, interesting wind colors and wind orchestra, if you will, composition. So I'm assuming and hoping and expecting that this will be quite a significant work for wind orchestra and cello to help add to that repertoire.
That is
Yeah.
the plan. That it'll be a hefty piece, maybe 20 minutes or so.
Hmm.
And so right now we've got probably nothing I can say, but we've got a lead commissioner, and we're working on trying to put together a consortium so we can get it out there as much as possible.
Perfect. I guess we got to run it down. You got to get back to composing, apparently. So I presume, I hope. Anyway, I'm speaking with composer Sean Friar. He will be his piece, excuse me, Velvet Hammer, is going to be performed by Camerata Pacifica all over the greater Los Angeles area. I'm going to run by the venues and give you the phone number. Sunday, January 10th. Is today Saturday? That's tomorrow. 3 p.m. in Ventura. Tuesday, the 12th of January, 7:30 p.m. in Santa Marina. Thursday, January 14th at 8 at Los Angeles Zipper Hall in downtown Los Angeles. Friday, the 15th of January in Santa Barbara, a little smaller concert at 1 o'clock and a full performance by Camerata Pacifica at 7:30 p.m. An amazing program. Sean's piece is just one of, well, in my mind, three very, very interesting contemporary works. Lots of fun. And I want to put a plug in for Awake. Go, everybody, to YouTube and just type in Sean Friar's name. That'll get you there. But I've been listening to Awake, I guess, most of last night, a couple, three times. Loved it. Loved it. And you're going to love this man's music making. Fabulous composer. Very accessible, wonderful, and very interesting material. Phone number for tickets. Very crucial. Area code 805 84. Oops, excuse me. Start again. Area code 805 884 8410. Call quickly. You only have a few hours, everybody, and this will be going all through the week. Sean Friar, thanks. What a great chat we've had. A very great pleasure to meet you and hear from you. Thanks. We're done.
Thanks so much, Dan. It was a pleasure.
All right. Bye bye.